about it, and I mean this in the most cynical, conceivable sense. Paul Skenes has a lot of power within this organization. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or hockey. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. I've wondered at times, while completely acknowledging and respecting that Skenes is a rookie or was a rookie, what it'd be like if he ever just, popped off and sounded some kind of, alarm bells or even an outright outcry regarding Bob Nutting's ownership or the trades Ben Cherington's made or even just little stuff. If it was little stuff about development, one tiny little thing that he'd seen or heard in the minor leagues on his way up, it would explode. And it would explode in the faces of the people, not just Nutting, but of all the people who are under the most public pressure right now. I've thought about it. You've thought about it. You've asked about it. And I've answered with my own views on it at times because he is kind of like, theoretically, the big get out of jail free card that everybody's been waiting for forever. It's not going to be Michael Keaton. It's not going to be Mark Cuban. Because whatever it is that they say, just like whatever it is that I say, can just be shrugged off. Yep, that's one person's opinion. But Skenes, that's something else entirely. So, with all of that in mind, this past week, Jim Lachimi is a friend of mine, been in the business for a long time, used to be a Pirates media relations director. That was a long time ago, not to date you here, Latch, but he did an interview with Skenes, and his specialty has always been magazine-style interviews. So he's going to ask some stuff that maybe a day-to-day reporter like myself isn't going to. And in this interview, which appeared on the Pirates website, Latch asked Skenes the question, can you talk about how you've been embraced by the Pirates since they selected you number 1 overall in the 2023 draft? To which Skenes responds, I'm going to read you his full answer verbatim. Obviously, being drafted number 1 overall was a huge honor, and since then I've had a fair amount of visibility and conversations with Bob Nutting, Ben Cherington, and other team officials. And they listen. I was the number 1 pick. Who cares? Whatever. I was still a rookie last year, but they were listening. And they're listening to guys like Mitch Keller, Brian Reynolds, and Brian Hayes, too. They're receptive. They listen to what we think we need to do to win. Mr. Nutting is very approachable. He's willing to listen because he wants to win, which is good because that's not the picture that a lot of people paint of him. The only difference is we're going to win in a little bit different way than the Dodgers and the Yankees, but we're going to win. It's the end of the response. Now, you know how I don't like to project what your response might be to that response, but I'm going to guess that you're thinking, aha, they got him. They suckered him in. He drank the Kool-Aid. Or if you're maybe less cynical but more pragmatic, thinking, well, of course he's going to say nice things about them. They're the ones who just might, make him some massive offer to try to keep him in Pittsburgh into his free agency years. Either way, based on my own experiences with Skenes, that's not him. Neither one of them. If you've ever paid, I don't want to say close attention, I want to say regular attention to the way he carries himself in interviews, or if you're ever privy to anything resembling a casual conversation that he's engaged in, this is a serious kid. This is a really, really serious kid for his age. He understands the gifts that he has. He understands the golden arm that he has. He understands the potential that he has to the extent that he plans for greatness. He sets himself up in a way, ideally from his own perspective, that he can achieve what he sees as reasonable objectives for someone who's been blessed to be able to do what he does. And I make this comparison so very carefully, and every time I tiptoe through it, but I'm gonna make it again anyway. He reminds me of Sidney Crosby. Sid, super drop dead serious from the moment he arrived. And all Sid ever wanted to do was win. All Sid still wants to do, even approaching 40 years old, is to win. His trajectory never changes. His thought process never changes. That's Skenes. That's everything that was described about Skenes before he got here, whether it was his time in the Air Force Academy or LSU. And it's everything I've seen with my own eyes and heard with my own ears in being around him. He's legit. And if you want to take what it was that he said and roll your eyes at it, well, what else would he say? It's an interview and it's going to run on pirates.com. You can do that. But I'm here to tell you that even if he proves to be incorrect, even if he is misguided in believing in these people, he's going to first give them a very real benefit of the doubt. When we come back, J1Q.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragecheck.org. That's gunstoragecheck.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Today's J1Q comes from Anthony, who says, DK, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. My question is, we all look at that $100 million mark as the next step for the Pirates spending-wise, certainly as we go back to the 2013 to 15 payrolls. But to equal $100 million in 2014, that's $130 million in today's actual cash. I think urging the Pirates to spend $100 million is cheapening the payroll dollars, just my line of thought. Well, Anthony, I can't speak for anybody other than myself, obviously. What I've done as it relates to $100 million is report that that's where it's going. Now, sometimes when I say things like that, and I say it real straight, it's presumed to be some sort of endorsement, even though almost every time I've brought this up, I've said that it really ought to be closer to 120. What I base the 120 on isn't whatever it was in, 10 years ago, and it isn't based on any kind of inflation rates or anything else like that. Just look at the division. That's all you need to know. That's all you ever need to do. There's no science to this. If you ever want to know what the Pirates should be spending, just look at the Brewers. Just look at the Reds. Just look at the Cardinals. Those teams, and the Cubs are a bit of an outlier because they're based in Chicago, although they haven't been spending a ton lately either. If you see those three teams, you can come up with some kind of amalgam of what it is that they're spending and say, all right, yeah, this is fair. This is fair. Now, they're all going through different challenges right now, especially in the post, I guess you could call it a cable collapse or regional sports network collapse that's taken place all around sports, not just baseball. The Reds, for example, just now had to turn over their broadcasting rights to Major League Baseball, which is something that Rob Manfred, the commissioner, wants. It's probably something I ought to do an episode on in the near future because it's a really big deal. And then there's the Brewers, who are trying to get massive upgrades to American Family Field. And then there's the Cardinals, who are, my God, for the first time in forever, struggling on the field and not selling out Busch Stadium. And then there's the Pirates, who kind of had a little bit of all of that mixed in with just terrible baseball management. But if you look at those other three teams, you'll see that it should be around 120, maybe just a little bit higher than that. So when I've been saying that I expect it to go to 100 million next season, I'm saying that from the reporting standpoint. I'm not saying that from the attaboy standpoint. That would represent an increase of 17 million from this past season, which again, I'm not saying in any sort of praising tone. I'm just not, because it shouldn't have been at 83 and you don't get credit for a self-dug hole. So if you ask me where this team should be, I think you're kind of sideways doing that, Anthony. I believe that payroll should be at 120, but I also believe that it should be 120 within the context of doing absolutely everything possible to sign Skenes through his arbitration years +2, meaning +2 years of his free agency time or his potential free agency time. That's a 7-year deal. That has him here until he's 30. That would show, if you're into messages, and I'm mostly not, but that would show an unprecedented commitment on the part of ownership. Not that Brian Reynolds and other players don't exist or don't count, but that's not what Skenes would be getting. So I would take those two things and put them together and say that if you have those financially, then you've got the right ownership stance on where payroll and where commitment should be. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot at Pirates. We'll do another one of these tomorrow.